Rachel! What's happened? What do you mean the abuse of customer service employees? Are you okay? Has something happened? Well, yes and no. Let's talk, shall we? If you didn't know, I work a customer service job in retail. I work on checkouts, basically. I've worked in these type of roles for about 3 years, and in that time I've had both good and bad experiences, but a lot more bad than good. But of course, every retail employee, bartender or waitress has had bad experiences. And I mean every single one of them. But I am of the belief that there is far more abuse of customer service employees than anybody feels necessary to talk about. But why am I raising this issue now? Well, recently I had my own anxiety-inducing experience with a customer. There's a young man who comes into work about every other day to buy energy drinks. He's about mid-20s and buys the same 2 drinks every other day, and I think nothing of it. But somehow the other day he managed to find my private and personal Facebook. We've no mutual friends, so I have no idea how he even got my name. And as a result, he thought it was acceptable to message me after I denied his friend request and ask me out for a drink. And some may say I'm overreacting, it's just a Facebook message, but not really. It's an uninvited crossing of boundary, with Facebook being quite a personal platform where people can publish information about which school they went to or their family, and attempting to gain access to that information from a stranger is not okay, even if they've served you on checkouts. And when I explained that to the customer, he told me to take it easy. When researching for this video, I discovered that I definitely wasn't the only person who had experiences like this. Now here's the thing. I would argue that memes, tweets and other internet media are genuine representations of how our generation and our society likes to communicate thoughts and ideas with each other, right? Stick with me on this.
I mean, if anything, they're the only sort of generalisation of social ideas that I have, because I am currently incapable of doing a national survey.
And one thing I can say for certain is that I have seen meme after meme after meme about bad experiences working in customer service and the shared experience of rude and abusive customers. There are countless Reddit threads as well and memes just joking about crying at work or not having abusive customers or having to fake your actual experience. But memes are supposed to be funny in general. In a way, I think such internet media represents our sort of desensitization and normalization of the blatant harassment of customer service employees. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying ban these memes. But as a checkout assistant, I just now expect to receive blatant rudeness and abuse and just generally have a tough time at work. And I think that representation within memes and internet culture shows that that is a shared experience. And that's sort of horrifying. Because maybe the abuse of people just because they're wearing a certain uniform isn't a joke. Now, come on Rachel, be fair. A lot of the memes are just tiny little pet peeves that employees have for customers. Yes, small yet surprisingly common pet peeves. I asked people on my Snapchat and Instagram stories to share their experiences, and some of those small pet peeves came up a lot. These are some examples I found.
Just so you know, all the stories and anecdotes I share in this video, names and workplaces have either been changed or just briefly described in order to protect these people.
This one is from Penelope, who works in a supermarket. Have had multiple rude customers, including a guy claiming I didn't know how to do my job because I didn't ask him if he had a loyalty card. Daisy, who works in an independent florist.
I specifically asked to see if working in a smaller, more independent store was any different from working in a big corporate place, and this is what she had to say.
Even now, I still have so many people come into the shop and just assume that they know more than me. Mostly though, I just get arrogant people who think that because I'm young, I don't know what I'm on about. I know what I'm doing, and even though I may not know anything, it's so rude to just talk down to me whilst I'm serving you. From Lily, who is a hotel receptionist, she said,
once a customer called to reception asking for a number for a takeaway. I asked what kind of food she was looking for, and she said, takeaway. I suggested she googled some takeaway numbers and see what she's feeling. She called back down angry because all that was coming up was Chinese, Indian, pizza, etc. and not just takeaway. I explained to her the concept of takeaway food and she left a formal complaint with my manager.
There's another supermarket employee who I'm calling Sapphire.
On the checkouts, some man legit walked up to me and said, "Now love, you're ugly." Another supermarket employee who I have called Hayley. Once some guy shouted at me for smiling at him rather than saying hello, even though he didn't say hello. He also screamed at me for not packing his bag, even though he said his child would do it. Another dude shouted at me
because there was water on the belt and went on about how he paid my wages. However, are these all just minor annoyances? The fact that this general rudeness is so general and is given from so many different people in different ways is why I believe that this abuse is just normalised and accepted. Because these are regular occurrences that you as an employee has no power to do anything about. And why should we accept this as normal? The customer is always right does not translate as a customer, the employee is not a person, and therefore you can treat them how you like. When you enter a restaurant, bar or shop, you as a customer are put into a position of power. The customer is always right. There is no reason as an employee who is likely to be on minimum wage, part-time and actually does not legally represent the company to try and screw you over. Most employees want to work with the customer in order to do a successful, stress-free job. Due to lacking power, employees are put into the position where they lack the means to do anything when a customer takes advantage of that power. Some examples of this I found were: had one casual chat with a customer and somehow was speaking about Nando's and how much I rate it. Then weeks later, Christmas time rolled around and an old lady, I'm guessing related to this old man, handed me a card and said I was told to give it to you. When she left, I opened it and the card said, "To Laura, I'm going to Nando's near London later this month. You're welcome to go with me." And then the man's name and phone number. Obviously, I never ever texted him. Never saw this man for months later. That was from Laura, who works in a supermarket. Have one customer who always grabs my hand without warning or permission to compliment my nails. Penelope, from the supermarket. I'm a barman in a pub/restaurant. We stopped serving food at 11 p.m. Around 10:58 p.m. it was fairly quiet, so I was just wiping and resetting a few messy tables. A couple walk in and head straight forwards to the bar. I hear a few very agitated comments coming from the kitchen as the couple have ordered 2 large steaks, one medium and the other well done. Time goes by so they can make the steaks as best as they can. I take the steaks over, I come and do the regular check back, I go over and say, "Is everything alright with your food?" And they reply, "Actually no, this is disgusting. The steak is stone cold. I wanted it well done, not basically burned. And this is not a medium rare like we asked." I just stand there in confusion as they had eaten at least 3/4 of their plate. So I reply saying, "I'm sorry we couldn't meet your expectations," in which they reply saying, "As you should be. We expect a full refund immediately." Our food policy to get a refund only covers if a customer has barely eaten the food and has a valid complaint. But as they had eaten most of their food, I say I don't think I can refund the food as most of it has been eaten. So they say, everyone's favourite line in customer service jobs, "I want to speak to your manager." I get the manager, he issued them a full refund of the food they completely ate by the time this was resolved, and I had a formal complaint handed in about my rudeness towards a customer who's from George who works in a pub. And in these experiences, employees have been made to feel uncomfortable or formal complaints have been made about them, despite the employee's lack of control for the rules. In some companies, if a formal complaint is made about an employee, the employee receives a strike or can be asked to leave. I've worked with people in both my current and previous job with families to take care of and bills to pay, living off overtime and still using food banks. If they've received a formal complaint over a petty issue such as these, what are they to do? It's the lack of empathy and sense of entitlement that shocks me the most. But hey, don't worry, I hear you. Sense of entitlement? Rachel, who do you think you are? You're the entitled one thinking you have the right to complain about customers. Disgraceful, what awful service. But let me finish my piece. Given the power dynamic that most employees experience when they enter their workforce, I find employees to be quite vulnerable people. And that is where blatant harassment and abuse comes into the situation. A guy followed me to my car once after my shift finished at 10 at night, and he tried to speak to me. He'd previously come through the till and asked me if I had a boyfriend and hit on me. Had to speak to the police about it. Penelope, supermarket employee. On New Year's, I was working and a table of 2 men and 1 woman, probably around 23-ish, kept staring at me. Even when I gave them their food, they were all silent and giggly and made me feel super self-conscious because I had no clue what I had done. At one point, one of the guys dropped his ID, so I picked it up and gave it to him, and they all just laughed. One in particular kept staring at me, and I was worried I'd done something wrong. They waited until they were the last table in the restaurant and the guys awkwardly shuffled off leaving. The girl sat smirking at me. She then approached me really close and she said, "Hey, I just wanted to know if you're single and I could have your number." At this point I was like, what? Before I could say anything, she said, "It's for my mate, the awkward one who dropped his ID." I was aware my manager was watching, thank God, and said that I couldn't give my number out whilst at work because it was against regulation. She just nodded and smirked and said right, and left. But 10 minutes later, when my manager had gone to the back of the restaurant, she came back again, stood really close again, and said, "I feel better now that your manager isn't here." Gets her phone out and says, "What's your number then?" I just laughed and said, "My name is Chelsea, if you can find me. I'm pretty easy to find." She straight away goes onto Facebook and types in the name, stares at me while I shrug, and she says, "What's your surname then?" Knowing I can't lie because she's searching me there and then, I have to give my name to her. She then says, "Thanks," and walks out. Next thing I know, I have a message from this guy saying he wants to take me out on a date, etc. I thought it was extremely inappropriate, and I was low-key harassed by someone to get my name for his purposes. But due to the job that I am in, you can't just say, "F off, you're not getting my number." You have to smile and be polite about it. And at the end of the day, basically that means you can't say no. In the end, I told him I was flattered, but I was already dating somebody. Chelsea, independent diner. And I think this last one will shock you. I'm a retail wireless consultant. I mostly sell phones, tablets, and other electronic devices, and troubleshooting. At the end of almost every transaction I have, I give my business card to the people I help. After dealing with a couple in their late 20s, I gave them my card. About 2 days go by and I receive a picture message of the girl fully nude asking me when I have off my next day and that she'd give me her address and I could come over. I told her no thank you and lied about being in a current relationship. 2 minutes later, I received a text message from the husband, pissed off that I didn't want to have sex with his wife. I told them to please not contact me again, showed the text to my boss and told her I didn't want to work with them again. A few days later, they came in and asked my manager and tried to get me fired, saying that I sent all these photos and texts trying to break him and her up. My boss thankfully backed me up and told them that she had seen the text and told them to never come into the store again, which is from Gary, who works in a phone store. And this stuff is common. And to my understanding, there is nothing that employers can actually do about it, besides ban customers. But mainly it's all verbal, so there can rarely really be any evidence. There's no receipts for physical stalking. And even then, the employee themselves doesn't have the power to ban that customer, so what if the boss disagrees? And when everyone in the store works part-time, how can anyone even keep up a ban? But above all else, what is the point of a ban if these people are not publicly called out and this behaviour is not publicly disapproved of? So I googled abuse from customers, to try and see what I could find in terms of formal action. One article I found was on the Australian website called the Health and Safety Handbook. They stated, employers have a legal duty to minimise all psychological and physical health risks to their workers, including those resulted from customer abuse. Businesses that are found to have failed in their legal obligation to provide their staff with a safe working environment can face costly litigation claims. Yet this perspective seems to be a warning to employers and blames them for not providing a safe working environment. But in my opinion, an abusive customer is an abusive customer. Surely there is a procedure to deal with that itself. I then decided instead to add UK on the end of the search to get something a bit more specific. And in fact, employee abuse was covered in the government website, gov.uk. What I found was a customer conduct page. Yet all that I found was a PDF called Guidance for Staff on How to Handle Customers Who Exhibit Threatening, Abusive or Violent Behaviour. The document itself stresses how, as an employee, you do have a right to not serve a customer for abusive behaviour, and if such behaviour occurs, then you should call your immediate supervisor. But what about when it's packed on the shop floor? You're understaffed and your supervisor is on the complete other side of the store. When the manager's in the kitchen and you're responsible for all the customers in the restaurant. When the customer follows you outside work premises after you've finished your shift. Aside logging incidents of discrimination where consequences were not mentioned, there was no formal action described when it came to employee abuse. I understand that the law can argue it is the employer's responsibility to take action, but in this country specifically, we don't really have a very good history when it comes to workers' rights. And it is not ridiculous to claim that as an employee, you have no trust in the company that you work for. So that's the issue. The general disrespect and abuse of customer service facing employees is real, common, and normalised. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful in finding UK-based statistics about this issue. Yet, I also think that speaks to the issue itself. If you work in customer service and you feel you receive mistreatment regularly, you have every right to speak about it. We need to start this conversation. You are a person, and this is about how we treat each other as human beings. And if you are a customer having a bad day, and you decide to take it out on an employee just for the sake of taking it out on someone, you imply that you do not see them as a person. You have taken away their humanity and deemed them as your punching bag, and that's not okay. Because I know that when I wear a uniform, I am seen as lesser. I am only a person to my colleagues. If bad customer service can be punishable, then why can't the abuse of customer service employees? Or I don't know, at least a friendly sign saying, please don't mistreat our staff? And if you're watching this thinking that I'm just some dumb millennial Gen Z complaining because she can't handle real work, then I have some advice for you. Use the self-service checkouts. Or actually, no. Just shop online. You probably use the self-service machine wrong. And then you'd get mad at me when I come over and try and help you. That was my video on customer service, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed it or benefited from any way. If you can relate to this as a customer service employee or believe that it is an issue just like I do, then share this video, spread the message. I make loads of different kinds of content, but I've been having a lot of ideas for these sort of video essay style videos, so if you're interested in them, like, subscribe, drop some comments, give me some feedback, tell me what you think. If you're interested in me, if you're new to my channel, then please subscribe and follow me on Instagram and Twitter for updates on any other videos or any other thoughts. I had a lot of audience interaction for the making of this video. As a result, it took me ages to make this video, but thank God it's finally out. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Have a beautiful day, good luck at work, and I love you. Thank you. See you soon.